I'm Drew Baxter-Gibson, so I'm the Wellbeing Lead for Santander in the UK. So I help to coordinate all of our support that we offer to colleagues across physical, mental, social and financial wellbeing. I also co-chair our mental wellbeing network, which does fantastic work to promote positive mental wellbeing for our colleagues each day and encourages us to speak openly about how we're feeling and ask for support when we need it. So at the moment, we're all enduring a period of rapid change and uncertainty, which can present us with a lot of challenges when it comes to maintaining our mental well-being. Today, I'm going to be talking about considerations when supporting colleagues in different contexts. The best quote I've heard to explain this is, "We're all in the same storm, but each in our own different, unique boats," which I think is something that a lot of you may have heard already, but I think it really resonates at the moment, especially. Of course, there are similarities in what we're experiencing. We're spending more time at home and we're less able to do the things that we love with the people that we love. But it's also really important to recognise that we all have our own individual circumstances that are unique to us. So I wanted to just give some examples of things for us to think about. So many of us are at home with children, myself included, and whilst many parents and carers are experiencing similar issues, whether it's trying to keep young ones entertained or homeschooling, even that can be very different for each of us. So I have a young son who's 1 year old. He isn't at school age, so doesn't need homeschooling, but does have a ton of energy and can't currently get out quite the same to baby sensory classes and things like that he normally would, which presents some challenges. So coming up with lots of creative ideas and things like that around home at the moment. And my wife is currently on maternity leave, but interestingly is due to start a new job in the near future. So that in itself is a really unique situation in which she'll be starting a job remotely, having never met anyone. So even that's unique. So when she does start work, I'll be taking some shared parental leave. So we're fortunate that one of us will be at home in the coming weeks. So many of you will have children or other caring responsibilities. You may have 2 or more children of different ages with different requirements and your own working patterns, which can be challenging for you to try and navigate. So we're all differently impacted by school closures, or apart from our loved ones who maybe normally help us with childcare as well, each of these being challenges that we'll face in different ways, even though they are similar. So that's just one different aspect. So some of us won't have children at home and maybe living in different contexts. So some of us may be the children at home or living with our parents, or navigating life in busy households, maybe with more people at home throughout the day than there would normally be. We may have limited space to focus on our work or on ourselves, or be without our usual outlets to maintain our well-being. That could cause friction with the people that we live with, our loved ones, for us to navigate together. We may be living with someone who is, or ourselves be, classed as vulnerable, which comes with its own considerations and worries for us to navigate as well. Others of us may be feeling the impacts of isolation. So especially where we may be working at home, perhaps in roles that don't necessarily mean we naturally talk to many colleagues by phone or video, or in person as part of our usual work. One benefit I have of working from home at the moment is I was able to ask my wife to proofread what I planned on talking through and give it a bit of a sense check. And she very rightly pointed out that you can often feel lonely even if there are people around you as well, which is something I can attest to personally through experience with depression in the past. So as well as any diagnosed mental health conditions, that we each have our own well-being and individual personalities that mean even if we did have exactly the same experiences as someone else, we may experience them very differently. So personally, I'm an introvert who's quite happy and quite used to working from home as part of my routine. But you may be or might have colleagues and loved ones who are extroverts who find the additional time at home that much more difficult. So it's just really important to remember that we might all experience experience similar situations in a different way. I also wanted to talk about the financial impacts, and how they can impact us differently. So clearly on the surface, there will be many differences. So some of us will continue to work or receive full pay. Others may be furloughed with reduced income or have no income at all at the moment. So work and income at your organisation may be unchanged, but your colleagues or your partner's household incomes, their incomes may be reduced, and that may be impacting you as well. So beyond those obvious differences, I think it's important to remember that even where the direct financial impacts may seem the same, for example, anyone who's got a 20% reduced income at the moment, the severity with which we feel that can be very different. Each household, we may have different levels of savings and disposable income, and many of us who may struggle to make ends meet normally, it may make it that much more difficult for us, where other people may be more prepared to navigate that currently. Another topic that I wanted to focus on was those of us who are in particularly challenging home environments. So sadly, we know that over 2 million people each year experience domestic abuse, and there's a particular danger presented during times of social distancing, with National Domestic Abuse Helpline reporting a 50% increase in calls in recent weeks. We also know that addiction can be more prevalent, with increases across use of drink, drugs, gambling, linked to a loss of our usual structure and routine, as well as anxiety linked to the coronavirus or other challenges that might currently be or seem more prevalent to us. We know some people may be disconnected from their usual social groups, or living in situations where we don't feel able to be our full selves. For example, LGBTQ colleagues who may not be out or feel accepted for who they are at home. Some of our colleagues may have disabilities or need workplace adjustments, and they may also be finding things particularly challenging or facing additional hurdles to being able to transition to working from home or remotely, or impacted by social isolation. And we also know that religious ceremonies and funerals are impacted, a cause for great concern for many who have lost loved ones or feel unable to practice their faith. For example, we know Ramadan is happening at the moment. So what can we learn from this as individuals and as organisations? So I've just run through many different contexts that different people may be facing, but in reality, this is only a few of them. While that may seem overwhelming, when considering how we can support people, is really much simpler than you may think. The key thing is to remember that each of us will have our own individual circumstances that we'll experience very differently. So instead of trying to create one set of rules that works for everyone, the best way to support the people around you is to talk to them. It's to understand those unique situations and ask people to consider what support would be most useful for them, and what steps you can take to implement that. As organisations, our goal should be to create a culture where our people feel empowered to make the decisions that are best for us as individuals and as teams, and that needs to be right throughout our organisations, from the top to the bottom. So if I had one main tip, it would just be to remember that people are the social glue that binds organisations together. So there's little else you can do that will be as valuable as encouraging colleagues to take time to connect with one another, and encourage your leaders to set the tone and lead by example. So proactively modelling and sharing their own stories. So what are they struggling with? Do they have family at home or pets scratching at doors whilst we've got meetings going on? Like many of us, are they finding it more difficult to sleep? And what are they doing to adapt? What steps are they taking to look after their own well-being? by role modeling these behaviours, they're sending a really clear message to everyone in the business that looking after our well-being is a priority for all of us. And that message will feed through to our people, who will feel empowered to speak up and ask about the support that they need. It will also filter through to your line managers, who will feel empowered to put the well-being of their teams first and better understand that a happier and healthier team is a more productive one too. A final thing that I wanted to talk about is how can we best support those colleagues in challenging home environments. So whether it's domestic abuse, colleagues with disabilities, or those at risk from addiction, these are all really different scenarios, but the approach for support remains quite similar throughout them. It's, as well as setting that right culture, it's essential that we talk openly about difficult topics. When we don't talk about them, we allow them to fade into the background. They're still just as present, but people will feel more at risk and less able to come forward for support than they would otherwise. So as well as talking openly, we need to have the right support mechanisms in place. So do we have the right initiatives in place to support colleagues, but also not just internally, but through external specialist experts? And if you do have that support, are we talking openly enough about it? Are we promoting it regularly so that the message is really reinforced and there for our colleagues as well? So that's it. That's my top tips of supporting team members in different contexts, which I hope that you find useful, and a very happy Mental Health Awareness Week to you all.